John chapter 8 unfolds in the treasury of the Jerusalem temple during the Feast of Tabernacles. Jesus stands before a hostile audience of Pharisees and Jewish leaders who have been pressing him throughout the chapter, challenging his testimony, disputing his origins, and accusing him of harboring a demon. The exchange is charged. These men seek to catch him in some claim that can be turned against him. The discourse opens at verse 12, where Jesus announces himself plainly, "I am the light of the world." That declaration frames everything that follows. In verses 24 and 28, he returns to the same expression, each time directing it at his commission and mission. The argument builds through accusation and response until, in verse 58, Christ speaks the words that have divided interpreters for centuries. The verse reads, "Truly, truly I say to you, before Abraham was, I Amos Fausto Socini." Reading this verse with care for both the Greek text and its immediate context arrives at a reading that differs sharply from the one most traditions have inherited. The key lies in recognizing what the words "I am" are completing. When Jesus says "I am" in verse 58, he is not uttering the phrase for the first time in that chapter. He has already used the identical Greek expression ego eimi in verses 24 and 28, where the context makes plain that he means "I am the light of the world." That identity, established at the opening of the discourse, reappears with consistency throughout the chapter. The "I am" of verse 58 does not hang in the air as a bare absolute claim. It completes itself from the narrative in which it stands. Christ is saying, in effect, that his identity as the light of the world preceded the moment when Abraham becomes what God named him to be. And this is where the second half of the verse demands close attention. The Greek word rendered "was" in most translations is not the ordinary past tense of the verb to be. It is the aorist infinitive genestai, which carries the sense of to become. The name Abraham, as Genesis 17 verse 5 records, means father of many nations. God gave Abram this new name precisely because his descendants would encompass the Gentiles. When Christ declares that his identity as the light of the world precedes the moment Abraham becomes the father of many nations, he is making a claim about the scope and priority of his mission. The light he embodies was appointed before the inheritance of the nations through Abraham's name was fulfilled. He is warning the Jews before him that this light is not the exclusive possession of Abraham's physical offspring. Divine grace, if they refuse it, will pass to the Gentiles, fulfilling the wider meaning encoded in that name. This reading aligns with the immediate occasion of the speech. Jesus is admonishing his interlocutors to believe in him while the opportunity remains, before the grace he carries is transferred elsewhere. Isaiah 49 verse 6 puts the same thought in prophetic form, where the servant of the Lord is declared to be a light for the nations, appointed in the divine purpose before the servant's own birth in natural descent. That appointment precedes genealogy, just as Christ's commission as light of the world precedes the realization of Abraham's name. The Trinitarian reading takes a different path. On that view, "I am" is an echo of the divine name, disclosed at the burning bush in Exodus 3 verse 14, where God identifies himself to Moses as "I am I Amos." The claim on this reading is one of eternal divine self-existence. Christ speaks from beyond time, identifying himself with the God of Israel. The reaction of the crowd reaching for stones is taken as proof that those present understood the statement as a claim to divinity. The difficulty with this reading emerges from the text itself. The fuller formula in the Septuagint at Exodus 3 is not simply ego eimi, but ego eimi hoen, the one who is. That distinction matters. Pressing the two-word phrase throughout John 8 as a divine name forces the same logic onto verses 24 and 28, where the same expression appears without any indication that the listeners took it as a claim to divinity. The phrase ego eimi is not by itself a title, it requires a predicate, and the discourse has already supplied one. Furthermore, if Christ's intention were simply to assert eternal self-existence before Abraham, the contrast between his existence and Abraham's would be framed differently. The use of genestai for Abraham, a verb of becoming and process set against the simple present eimi of Christ, is best explained by the fulfillment of a name and a mission, not by a metaphysical gulf between uncreated divine being and creaturely becoming. The Socinian reading does not diminish the verse's force. It preserves the genuine priority of Christ's commission over the scope of Abraham's genealogical inheritance, grounded in the meaning of Abraham's name and in the consistent usage of I am across the whole of John chapter 8. Christ asserts that his role as the light of the world was appointed before Abraham ever became what God declared him to be, the father of a multitude of nations. This is not a modest claim. It is a claim about the universal scope of a divinely appointed mission, directed against those who would confine God's grace to ethnic descent. But it is the claim of a commissioned mediator, one who speaks in his Father's name and carries his Father's will into the world. Not the claim of a second divine person asserting co-eternal being. The verse, read within its chapter, within its grammar, and within the broader testimony of Scripture concerning the one God who sends and the Son who is sent, yields precisely this meaning. Every word finds its place. Nothing is forced. In closing, I want to encourage you, examine for yourself. Search diligently, read the Scriptures with an open and rational mind. Socinianism does not rest on tradition or church authority, but on the conviction that God's truth is rational, clear, and morally sublime. If this perspective has resonated with you and you wish to explore the biblical Unitarian view further, visit www.socinianismus.de for in-depth articles, studies, and reflections on central theological questions. If this video has been helpful, please support this work with a like and subscribe to the channel so you never miss another contribution on the unity of God, the teaching of Jesus, and the rational interpretation of Scripture. Until the next video.